We're looking at the Chapter 12 textbook translation exercises from Fuller and Choi on page 75. We will look first at number 2, so I will read that. Adonai Elohai va'ori, bishmo batach hatzadik. So we begin with Adonai Elohai. Now here is the proper name of God, Yod He Vav He. Then we have Elohai va'ori. Now it looks like we're going to have to supply a to be verb in here, but let's unpack these two phrases. We have Elohai va'ori. And we notice here Elohai, we have what looks like a pronominal suffix. We need to look over here at some of the forms of Elohim to make sense of this. We have Elohim, this is our absolute plural noun, and it can mean either gods, plural, or capital G God, depending on context. Now in the construct, we would see it as a plural construct. Notice the ending here, Elohe. We have the serayod, which is a very good indicator that we are looking at a masculine plural construct. And I put Elohe Yisrael as an example of the kind of construct package that Elohe would occur in. Here we have the God of Israel. Israel is a proper name, and so this becomes the God of Israel. As another example, I put Elohe Canaan, and this is Canaan, and so in this case, rather than the God of Canaan, it would be the gods of Canaan. So we have the God of Israel, the gods of Canaan, same plural construct. And then we have Elohai, which is the form we have in our sentence number 2. Notice that we have a patach and a yod. This is our normal form for a first common singular pronominal suffix on a plural noun. And certainly we have a plural noun here, it's Elohim. So we have Elohai. So coming back over to our example here, we have a first common singular pronominal suffix. So this becomes my God. Most of the time in the Old Testament, Elohai refers to my God, although there's maybe 2 or 3 places where it could be my gods, but very uncommon that it would be translated as my gods. Normally it's my God, and in this case, since we're talking about the Lord, clearly it's talking about my God. And then we have Ori. And here is another first common singular pronominal suffix, but it is the form that goes on singular nouns. It's the hierarch yod. And so this means that or, in this case, is singular. So we have the Lord. We're going to supply an is here. The Lord is my God and my light. This is somewhat similar to Psalm 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation. So here we have the Lord is my God and my light. And notice the atnach here, which indicates that we have a pause in the sentence, something like a period or a semicolon, sometimes a comma. We move on then to bishmo. We'll stop there. Here's a good example of 3 things packed together into one unit. So we have our preposition, bait. We have a noun, shame. And then we have a pronominal suffix, in this case a third masculine singular pronominal suffix. So we have bishmo, in his name. Now shame is an irregular when you put a pronominal suffix on it. It loses its long vowel, just becomes shemo with a vocal schwa. And so as a result, the bait, which normally would have a vocal schwa, bumps up against a vocal schwa, and it lengthens to a short vowel. So we have bishmo. So we have in his name, batach hatzadik. Batach is a perfect 3ms form of the root batach, which means to trust. And then we have hatzadik, Tzaddik is an adjective, but it can be used like a noun, in this case with the article on it and the fact that it is a candidate subject here, masculine singular. For the verb, we would say the righteous trusts. So in his name, the righteous trusts. So let's look at the entire unit here. The Lord is my God and my light. In his name, the righteous trusts. Okay, let's move on to number 6. I will go ahead and read number 6. Ha'ele ha'anashim et Shaul, asher azavu et Elohim, va'asher shachachu et amo. Now I read it with a question in my voice, and that gives away something, but we need to go back and take a look at the beginning here. We have ha'ele. At first glance, this hey with a patak looks a lot like a definite article. But note that when a definite article comes before an aleph, it will lengthen, like in our second word here, anashim. Notice that the hey has a kametz. It's lengthened before the aleph because the aleph rejects doubling and causes the vowel to lengthen. So here we see a patak before an aleph, and so something else is going on here. It's not a definite article. So what we are looking at is an interrogative particle. This is our interrogative. Our interrogative is setting this up as a question, at least through the atnach and maybe the entire example. If this was a definite article, then we would have an attributive adjective. This would be attributive, and we would have these men. But because there is an interrogative particle, this is now indefinite. Ela ha'anashim, we have a mismatch, indefinite plus definite, and so we would say these are, and then we would add the interrogative, are these the men? So this phrase here becomes, are these the men? Then we have et Shaul. Now in this case, there is no verb here. We are supplying the word are, the to be verb, possibly were, it depends on the context, but we'll just say are here. Are these the men et Shaul? Since there's no verb that could make this a direct object marker, this becomes our preposition with. So we would say, are these the men with Shaul, with Saul? And then it continues on, Asher azavu. So this is something like a comma, this atnach. Asher, who, azavu, this is a third common plural, perfect. Remember, our ending for a third common plural is the shurik of the root azav, which means to forsake. And it looks like there is not an explicit subject, so who is acting like the subject. Who have forsaken, or who forsook. Et, now in this case, et is being used as a direct object marker. It's hearkening back to the verb forsake, and forsake is a verb that takes a direct object. And so who forsook et Elohim, who forsook God. Elohim is the direct object, and we have a direct object marker. Now we'll move to the last part. Va'asher shachachu et amo. We have va'asher. Note here that we have the vav with a patach, but the only reason we have a patach here is because our first vowel is a compound shua, hatef patach, and so we would have a vocal shua bumping up against a compound shua, and when that happens, the initial vocal shua changes to be the short vowel that corresponds to the half vowel, so it becomes va'asher. And who, shachachu, again another perfect third common plural that relates back to the men who forsook and the men who forgot. This is shachach, is to forget. Who forgot et amo. Another direct object marker that relates back to forget. And then we have amo. Am is one of those interesting words that ends with a single consonant but harkens back to a Proto-Hebrew form that had two consonants. So this is basically our Proto-Hebrew form. The meme by itself at the end of a word doesn't betray the fact that it was a doubled consonant, but when we add a suffix to it, in this case a 3ms pronominal suffix, the second meme that used to be there drops back in as a dagesh forte. The meme doubles, so we get amo. This also allows the vowel to remain short because this is a closed syllable. So we have who forgot his people. Let's go back, look at the whole verse. Are these the men with Saul who forsook God and who forgot his people? Let's move ahead and look at number 8 now. We have Haya deber Adonai el Eliyahu lemor chara api vivnei Yisrael ki zavachu lelohim acherim. So we have Haya. This is a perfect third masculine singular of the root Haya, to be. Devar Adonai. This is definite. So we have the word of the Lord. We will use Debar Adonai as the subject of the sentence. And we would say the word of the Lord was El Eliyahu, to Elijah. This is the proper name, Elijah. So the word of the Lord was to Elijah. That's a very common idiom in the Hebrew Bible. It means that the word of the Lord came to Elijah or to some prophet. Lemor. This is an infinitive construct which we will come to later in the semester, of the root amar, to say, and it just means saying. So the word of the Lord was to Elijah, saying, and this oftentimes introduces some kind of direct speech, so we can put quotation marks around this in our minds. Chara api. Chara is a perfect 3ms of the root chara, and it means literally to be hot, and we often use it in the context of anger. So someone's anger was kindled, someone's anger became hot. Then we have api. Now we're used to seeing this as the word af, and so sometimes when a word ends with a final form and then we put a pronominal suffix on it, it becomes harder to identify because we're used to seeing it with the final form. And when that, in this case, pe, is no longer a final form, it doesn't look like we're used to seeing it. But api, we have our first common singular pronominal suffix on there. Notice that af is another one of those words, like we saw, where the protoform had a doubled consonant. We call those geminate nouns. We'll also see geminate verbs later. And so when a suffix is added, the final letter doubles. So we have api. We saw that earlier up in the first example at the end, amo. So api, and this is literally my nose. So first common singular suffix, nose, my nose. And the idiom came to mean my anger. So literally, my nose is hot, or my anger is kindled. And then we have vivne. Notice that the bait here would normally have a dagesh leni, but it's lacking it sometimes when the previous word ends with a vowel and the words are pronounced closely together. We lose the dagesh leni. So instead of bivne, we have vivne. In any case, this is a preposition, in, by, with, and in this case, my anger is kindled with, we might say against. My anger is kindled against the sons of Israel, for, or because, zavachu lelohim acherim. Here we have a perfect third common plural, and it looks like there's no explicit subject here. We need to go back to the sons here, the sons of Israel. Notice that Israel is definite, and so sons becomes definite, the sons of Israel. For they, since it's a finite verb, we can supply an implicit pronoun, they. For they sacrificed, zavak is to sacrifice, lelohim achirim. Let's look at how we end up with lelohim, because this is instructive. We start with a lamed and a vocal schwa. This is our inseparable preposition, meaning two or four. And this comes up against Elohim, which begins with the compound schwa, hatef sagol. When the vocal schwa bumps up against the compound schwa, the initial vocal schwa lengthens to the vowel that corresponds to the compound schwa. In this case, the compound schwa is a hatef sagol, so this causes the initial vowel to lengthen to a sagol. Now when the aleph quiesces, the sagol, a short E-class vowel, lengthens to a tsere, a long E-class vowel. Thus we end up with lelohim. Lelohim, to God, or in this case, we're going to say God's, because God's anger is kindled against the sons of Israel because they sacrificed to other gods. Achirim is the adjective other. Notice that it matches Elohim. It is masculine plural, and it's indefinite. So we have Elohim is indefinite and Achirim is indefinite. To other gods. Gender matches masculine, the number matches plural, and the definiteness matches. They're both indefinite. Let's run through the entire sentence. The word of the Lord was to Elijah, saying, My anger is kindled with the sons of Israel, for they sacrificed, or we might say they have sacrificed, to other gods.